Kids, welcome to the Far Out Podcast, the Christmas Day edition. Yes, kids, I am recording this podcast, at least this portion of this podcast episode, on Christmas Day, the 25th. So, at the time of this recording, I hope that you had a Merry Chrysler, and that by the time this comes out, I hope that you also have a Happy New Year, that it's fun, and that you can ring in the 2026 year with friends, family, good festivities, good vibes, good New Year's resolutions, so on and so forth. Make it your year, kids. Do what you want to do. Go create something and just, let your imagination run free in all the ways that you think could best improve your life and the world around you as well. But for myself, kids, where my imagination runs free is in several different ways. This, of course, referring to the very podcast itself. Of course, I love this as a creative outlet, but also, in addition to me speaking into a microphone, which is firmly placed in my kitchen, uh, yeah, when I'm not doing this, I'm also making music with my friend Francisco, who you may better know as Sojourn One. That's his solo artist name. And when we come together, kids, we form the band, the music group known as To Go, and we released a single, our latest track, "Kids," and this one was a Christmas themed song, and we got this one in just in time for the holidays. So if you have not listened to it, you'll be hearing a Christmas song after the Christmas season. But that's okay, kids, because some people leave their Christmas trees up year round. Some people celebrate Christmas in July, and so why not listen to a Christmas song in spring or summer or whenever you happen to find it? But yes, kids, me and Francisco, we really enjoy making music together, and it's an incredibly fun process. And this track came up pretty suddenly, pretty quickly for us. We kind of got the foundation of the idea midway through November, and when we realized that we wanted it to be a Christmas song, we realized, well, really the best case scenario is to have this thing released prior to Christmas, so that way we can truly get in on the holiday spirit of it all. And so, from writing to recording to mixing to mastering to releasing, the whole bit. We recorded this thing in a little under a month, and so yeah, it was it's a labor of love, and we're just happy to do it. But yeah, so just the fact that we were able to kind of come together and make something in such a short turnaround that people seem to have embraced in a really positive and fun way is just great. So again, thank you for watching and listening to the Far Out podcast over the last year, but also thank you for listening to our musical project To Go, which began in year 2025 and will surely continue onward into 2026 as well. And I won't give away any specifics, but just speaking for myself and for Francisco, for Mr. Sojourn, I'm always writing. We're always working on stuff, and so we have a couple irons in the fire there. But also with Sojourn One's solo stuff, he has showed me snippets of what's coming in his future. And again, I won't give anything away specifically, but just from what I've heard, I think it's incredible. And I'm not just saying that because he's one of my best friends. I'm not just saying that because we come together creatively and all that stuff. I just think from a literal musical production standpoint that he's just hitting it out of the park. And I'm really excited to hear his newest stuff in its full release and its entire completed form. And I'm also really looking forward to you, yes, you, the faithful listener, to also listen to his stuff as well. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, and I hope that there's cool stuff on the horizon for you as well. But I also now want to talk about things that are in the past, kids, because since we last got together on the Far Out podcast, a lot has happened with my favorite sports teams, That being the Minnesota sports teams. You got the Vikings, the Timberwolves, the Wild. You got the Twins, of course, but they're not playing right now. And then you have the Lynx as well, which I'm slowly becoming more and more a fan of them. But for the big three that are playing right now, they're actively playing games right now. You got the Vikings, the T Wolves, and the Wild. And what's interesting is that on December 14th, all three of them played their games respectively. The Wild, the Wolves, and the Vikings played, and they all won their games. And so on December 14th, kids, all three factions of the Minnesota sports teams there, they played and they won their games. And that was pretty crazy. I see a stat here that this is the first time this has happened since 2003. So, going on literally over 20 years since multiple Minnesota teams, since those three have played on the same day and won all their respective games. And so, it's kind of resetting the history books there. But yeah, kids, it's funny because you look at Minnesota sports and like, I think a lot of other fan bases across the entirety of just sports overall think that Minnesota's kind of a cakewalk. Like the Twins don't have a very large payroll. We have some good players, but not overall a great team. With the Vikings, we have a so-so quarterback. We have a great wide receiver. And the Wild are kind of up in the air too. But that's kind of the thing about Minnesota sports is that like we have great building blocks across every facet of sports. Like Byron Buxton, one of the best players, pretty much in all of baseball right now. Same with Justin Jefferson on the Vikings, one of the best wide receivers in the game. Anthony Edwards, one of the best basketball players in the NBA. And then we have Krill, Krill Kaprizov on the Wild, one of the best hockey players right now. So much so that we signed him to an 8-year contract. So like as a team, as teams go for Minnesota sports, it's kind of equated to like endless suffering because we don't really win a whole lot of playoffs and a whole lot of championships. But when you look at like the individual pieces on each respective team, we do pretty good. We consistently do pretty good too. So like, yeah, look, I'm all in on Minnesota sports. Like I just love sports overall, but like to see to see so many of the teams I love just win literally back to back to back, and for that to get recognized, I think is pretty cool as well. But right now as the football season is winding down, I want to spend some time on that because the regular season is about to end and the playoffs are coming up, and my Vikings will not be in the playoffs. Despite us winning our last couple of games, we just were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, and then eventually the Super Bowl, the superb owl, as it were, is going to come and go. But yeah, for the Vikings themselves, though we are not going to the playoffs, we are working pretty gosh darn hard to finish out the season pretty strong because we of course played the Dallas Cowboys, the Boy Cows. We played the New York Giants, we played the Detroit Lions, and we have won all three of those games. Plus, we won against the Commanders as well. And so, right now, as of Christmas Day 2025, the Vikings have won 4 for 4 of their last respective games. And yeah, look, like JJ McCarthy has been, good, not great. And again, at the time of this recording, he did not play in the Lions game. In fact, he only played a portion of the Giants game because he has suffered yet another injury. He suffered a hairline fracture on one of his hands. I believe it was his dominant throwing hand, hence why he got benched partway through the Lions game and or no, partway through the Giants, excuse me, the Giants game, and then got benched for the totality of the Lions game. But look, for the for the parts that I saw throughout the Commanders game, the Cowboys game, and the Giants game, I think he's only gotten better, and it's fun to dunk on him. It's fun to make fun of him. It's fun. It's fun to say that he's a bum, he's a bust, that he's a first round draft pick that had no place being in the first round. Because he's been kind of so-so. But like again, if you go back and listen to the podcast over the last couple of months where I cover the Viking season, I've said that this is essentially really his first full season. Now again, semantics. If you actually want to get down to brass peanuts, technically it's his second because again he lost his literal first full year due to an injury. He tore his meniscus. He couldn't play on it even if he wanted to. So really in terms of NFL contract, negotiations and stuff like that, this is his second year. However, this is really his first full year on the turf and the cleats throwing the ball the whole bit. And for it being his first year, I knew there was going to be growing pains, and look, some of these growing pains have been excruciatingly painful. But despite that, I think he's gotten better. And I mean, you have to look at it in perspective of learning anything. I mean, were you, the listener, were you a good driver when you started immediately? You might say you were, but I bet you weren't. I wasn't. It took me time to become a good driver. And even now, that's debatable if I am a good driver. Like same with swimming. Were you a good swimmer when you started to swim? Not necessarily, but now after having done it for so long, like I can confidently say that I'm a good swimmer. You can probably say that you're a good swimmer if that's a skill that you have. I'm just saying, kids, that to excel at a certain skill set, you need to put practice in, you need to put reps in. I think that there's a saying somewhere, some way. It might have come from the back of a Hallmark card, but someone said somewhere that to be truly proficient at something, you have to put in like 1,000 hours. If you put in 1,000 hours over the course of your lifetime, you will be good at whatever it is you are trying to pursue. Well, for McCarthy, being an NFL quarterback, he hasn't put in 1,000 hours yet, at least not in terms of total play time. You could argue, well, he did, practice and he was in college. Okay, sure. Perhaps if you actually take the 1,000 hours thing fully literally, yeah, he might have already eclipsed that. But the point I'm making, kids, is that like you don't know how to do the thing from the jump unless you're, Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. And even Patty Mahomes, I think he sat his first full year, but whatever. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, so with McCarthy, we've won our last couple of games. Some of them not because of him, some of them partially because of him, but for the most part, he has been driving the car, at least to what I feel is a better degree. I think he's getting better, and for me, he is still my quarterback. He's still the present franchise QB. We could argue all day about if he should be or what will become of him and so on and so forth. And I'm very tapped into the Minnesota Vikings circuit. I follow a lot of radio personalities and media personalities that follow this team much more closely than I do. And there's a lot of debate on if McCarthy will even be the starting QB for the 2026 season. I certainly hope he is, and I think he deserves to be because I think the kid has the goods. I still hold true to that despite all the ups and downs. But look, I've only become more of a fan of his over the season. I have his jersey now. I'm rooting for him. And as I've said many times, kids, and I will say it before, I was there when he was drafted. I was at US Bank Stadium when the Vikings were doing that draft, and I was there in the stadium when it was announced. And with the overall, or what was it, fourth or fifth overall pick in the first round, the Minnesota Vikings have selected J.J. McCarthy, and the place went wow, and there were fireworks, and we were clapping. I mean, I was high fiving strangers, and so yes, of course. Am I drunk on the purple Kool-Aid? Absolutely. That being said, though, I'm all in on him. I think that he is the next step forward for the franchise. I think that he is the next developmental piece that we need to foster as we continue to go onward as a team. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to 2026. And though my Vikings are not in the playoffs, if your team that you like to follow is going into the playoffs and who knows goes on to the superb owl, then great. I'm happy for you guys, except if you're the Denver Broncos. But I digress. But yeah, so it's sports are fun. At the end of the day, sports are fun. And like I said, to see my big three teams win on the same day was fun, and to see McCarthy do pretty well despite getting injured was also fun. But yeah, I hope you're having fun as well as we close out the 2025 calendar year and begin 2026 as well. And I know another fan base though, kids, it's having just buckets full of fun. I mean, these kids are going crazy. In fact, I even had a fun Twitter exchange with a fan of this certain sports organization. Kids, the Chicago Bears are going on a freaking tear. And I'll be fully transparent. I'll fully admit this. Um, you know, the Bears have never been a good team historically. Yeah, I even think Bears fans will admit that. And again, I'm saying that as someone who's a Vikings fan who, we've never won a Super Bowl and we have a terrible track record in the playoffs. But, look, in a world where we, the Vikings, have QB struggles, you yourself, Chicago Bears fans, Stub Bears, have also had your own QB troubles as well. But not this year. In 2025, Caleb Williams is leading the Bears in ways that is freaking incredible. The dude is a savant. I mean, he's throwing darts. He's running like Lamar Jackson. I mean, this Bears team is for real. And I remember prior to the beginning of the 2025 season, I forget who the owner of the Bears is. I forget his name, but I remember he gave a press conference leading into the season. And of course, he's going to say things to hype up the fan base to get, morale boosted, to welcome in the next season and whatnot. So you could, debate if these are, truly the quotes of him. You could debate on the truthfulness of these quotes, because they could be a little, you know, fluffed up and stuff. But essentially, he said, "Hey, look, we're gonna take the North, as in the the division that the Bears and the Vikings and the Lions and Green Bay are in, and we're not gonna let them go. We're gonna take the North. We're gonna take it by storm. We're gonna be on top, and we're not gonna give that position back." And we all kind of looked around the NFL and said, "Good luck, bro." You know, uh, but no, the Bears said, "Hold my beer," because they've been going crazy. And one game in particular, playing an NFC a division rival, was when they played the Packers on, I believe this was on December 20th. They played the Packers, and this was one of the greatest games of football I've ever seen. I'm being fully real about that. I'm being fully honest. I've seen some great football games. I've seen some bad ones as well. Uh, this one was for the ages, and I'm not a Bears fan by any stretch of the imagination, nor am I a Green Bay fan. But in a world where I have to pick one of those two teams, I'll go for the Bears. In a world where I can't have the Vikings win it all, it would be really, really cool to see the Bears win it all as well. But in this game, you had the first string QB for the Packers go down. His name is Jordan Love. He got injured at some point, so the backup comes in, who I think his name is Jameis Winston. I think let me look that up real quick. Hold on, kids, while I ramble here. Green Bay Packers depth chart. Don't you just hate it, kids, when you're recording a thing and you just don't have the correct information that you need to accurately portray your thoughts? I know. No, it's not Jameis Winston. It's Malik Willis. Excuse me. Pardon me to the Willis family, though Jameis Winston also deserves some love as well. That guy, he will throw for 400 yards, but he'll also get you 7 interceptions as well. But boy, he will just launch the ball downfield. But looking at Malik Willis, who is the second string quarterback for the Packers, he came up, and I bet Chicago fans all kind of gave this sigh of relief, going, "Okay, great, now we just have to walk over the second string QB." Oh no, 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 no! Malik Willis said, "You hold my beer now," and he was balling out and throwing darts and running and moving the football. So it was a battle for the Bears, despite them losing their their first string QB. So I will give some credit to the Green Bay Packers organization for facilitating QB talent, that goes just beyond their starting guy. But really, uh, the real princess of the ball here was the Chicago Bears, because in this game alone, in this singular game, you had these things happen. In addition to a quarterback getting injured, you had the Bears fighting from behind, coming back. They did an onside kick in the fourth quarter to try to get some semblance of regaining possession of the football, to have just a chance at tying it up. They successfully get an onside kick, which is crazy. If you know how an onside kick works, it's not a standard kick that you put the ball down the field. You're really more so trying to move the thing just enough for both teams to essentially have the same amount of distance to try to get the darn thing. It's essentially a free ball. Anyone can recover it. And I believe Tom Brady was uh, commentating on that game for the Bears game, and he said that something like onside kicks have like an 8% chance of working, meaning that there's like an 8 to 12% chance that the kicking team will be able to recover their own kick when they're kicking into their opponent. Yet the Bears were able to do it. Uh, you have a fourth down. So in the fourth quarter, on a fourth down, this is it. This is like all bets are off. This could literally be the last play of the game. You have a fourth down touchdown to tie the game. Okay, in the fourth quarter, which that puts it into overtime as well, which is just freaking nuts. The fact that you have last second touchdown pass to tie the game is crazy. The fact that you have it on a fourth down pass, literally the last attempt you'll have to do this, is crazy. And the fact that it happens after an onside kick recovery is also incredible as well. Then you go into overtime. So overtime is again kind of a rare thing as well. That's freaking nuts. You go into overtime, and the Green Bay Packers had the ball to start the overtime uh, period, I should say, and they fumbled a snap, which caused the Bears to get possession. And so, how overtime works in the NFL, kids, is that both teams get a chance to have the football. So, it doesn't matter if they score 3 points or a touchdown or whatever, both teams will get a chance. So, if the Packers were to have scored a touchdown, the Bears would get a chance to go, okay, we also now score a touchdown. And if we don't, then that means that we lose. But that's essentially our chance. Well, kids, when the Green Bay Packers first got the ball in the beginning of the overtime period, or quarter, I guess I should say, that was their chance. Again, they could have scored 0 points, 3 points, 7 points, whatever, but that was their one opportunity to do something with the football. And what they did is that they fumbled the snap, ending their possession in overtime, and the Bears scooped it up. And then you have Caleb Williams just absolutely launching this ball. He did a moon ball pass in overtime after a fumble recovery for a touchdown pass to win the game. I mean, this thing was nuts. I don't have the official stats in front of me. I bet it was legitimately over 40 yards. It wouldn't surprise me if it was over 50, if someone corrected me on that. I mean, this thing was like a diet Hail Mary throw. I mean, it was unbelievable. And so, again, kids, a successful onside kick, nuts. Less than a 10% chance to have that work for the team that's kicking. You have a touchdown to tie the game in the fourth quarter on a fourth down, which is nuts. Goes to overtime, and then there's a bad snap in overtime, which changes possession, and then the Bears who gain that possession. You have Caleb Williams just launch the football down the field for the Bears to win the game and to beat the Green Bay Packers. And my dad and I were Vikings fans. We're not Bears fans, but we were both saying stuff out loud like, "Oh my gosh, like are you kidding me? No way that's nuts." I mean, w- we were on our feet, kids. Like this was one of the best games of football I've ever seen. It has everything you could ever want from a game of football. Again, injuries, overtime, onside kicks, fumbles, deep touchdown passes. I mean, yeah, just what a fun time, kids. And so again, in a world where my Vikings are not doing the best that they can on the field, it's good to see other teams win. It really is. And again, kids, these things that we call sports, these activities, they're just meant to be fun. And that Bears game was a lot of fun. And so yeah, am I a Bears fan after all this? No, I'm not. But do I have more respect for them now after that game? Of course I do. Yeah, I think that they're a fine organization. I think that they have the talent. I think that they have the goods. And I'll be honest, when they first drafted Caleb Williams and a couple other pieces, I thought, good luck. You're going to be fighting upwards. The Vikings have arrived, so please stand aside. But no, the Bears said, we're going to bear down, pun intended, and they're kind of shocking the world. And so, who knows how deep they'll go? I hope that they make a deep playoff run, and who knows, maybe they'll go to the Super Bowl. But yeah, if not, if it all gets wiped clean in the first round, kids, to have them play one of their final regular season games against the Packers and to have them win in spectacular fashion was just a lot of fun. And so again, I'm not just speaking as a Vikings fan. I'm not just speaking as like a Broncos hater or anything. I'm speaking as just a lover of football, someone who appreciates football and sports in general. Just enjoy these things, and thank you to the Bears for for putting on a great show, and go Vikings as we close out the 2025 season and look forward to 2026. So. Yeah, it's just it's been a good, last couple of weeks for sports, I'll say. It's been pretty fun. Anyway, kids, let's get into the world of movies for a bit here. At the time of this recording, there is now a new movie out in theaters right now, and it stars Timothy Chalamet, the guy I model my hair after, believe it or not. And This movie is called Marty Supreme, and it is about a professional ping pong player who rises up from kind of the more rookie league to becoming a national pro, and then going on to kind of the world stage and becoming the world's greatest player, stuff like that. This movie is essentially about his pursuit of greatness and wanting to be one of the best, if not the singular best, ping pong player in the world. Or so we think, because this movie, while it is marketed as a ping pong movie, as a sports movie, while it has literal ping pong paddles and balls on the posters and in the trailers and all that stuff, this movie is not about ping pong, really. I mean, maybe in a bedrock type of way it is, but I I saw it, kids, and there was not nearly enough ping or pong in this movie. I am going to I don't know if I'll really consider this a spoiler discussion of the film, but I will speak about it in a somewhat open context. I will just try to kind of give a framework for my thoughts here. So if you want to go in blind, skip ahead or come back and listen to this portion of the podcast after you see the film. But otherwise, if you don't really care, or if you trust my assessment of this movie to not give you spoilers, then we can go right on ahead. But yeah, so again, I saw this movie, and I wanted to see it for 3 reasons. One of them is Timothy Chalamet. I think he's a great actor. He's the lead in Dune, so he's the Duke of Arrakis and all that stuff. The Lisan Al Gaib, as it were. So that guy's just amazing. The second reason is that it's a period piece. I love period piece movies. I love being transported back in time and seeing locales and learning the lingo and seeing cars from that era, clothes from that era, all that good stuff. I think is just really fun because I'm a big fan of history. And then also, I wanted to see it because it's a ping pong movie. When you think of sports movies, you can think of Remember the Titans for football. You can think of Miracle for hockey. You can think of, I don't know, Surfs Up for surfing. I don't know. Or F1. For racing. Every kind of sport essentially gets its movie at one point or another. And this, to my knowledge, is really the only true one about ping pong. And ping pong is such a niche sport, but I thought, sure, let's learn about one of the great ping pong players. Like, take me on this journey and whatnot. And I I wanted so much more ping pong because what's interesting is that this is something that I knew about the movie, but I never put two and two together. So again, just to give context for this stuff, this is literally part of the context of the actual film itself. The movie is set in the 1950s. Okay, cool. It's a period piece. Take me there. What I had forgotten to realize is that in the 1950s, that means that we're in the aftermath of World War II. And the movie comments on that a lot, talking about, you know, um, Japanese players playing against American players, talking about how there's still kind of a nationwide unrest towards foreigners, talking about how even a victory as, quote, small as a ping pong title is still huge. It's still important for morale. And I never thought that would be an aspect of this film, and they refer back to it a lot. And so you would think that, again, me being a person who enjoys period pieces and is a big fan of just learning about history, you would think that I would really appreciate. Oh my gosh, in this sports movie, they're referring to real, you know, history. One of the most pivotal, time points, in all of history. This is amazing. But I thought the movie kinda got bogged down by it. I honestly thought that they lost the plot because, like, in what Marty, hence the name of the movie, this guy's name is Marty, that's who Timothy Chalamet plays. In following his pursuits to get to a higher level of play and literally being able to play in these different tournaments, you're following his trajectory throughout the movie, and so, like, you know, he will say he qualifies for a tournament, and whatnot, like in London or something. Well, he has to literally get from New York to London. Like, it's not like he can just board a private plane and just he's there.
Like he has to pay his own way type stuff. And so in the movie, you are following his side quests, for lack of a better term, to acquire the funding, to acquire the recognition, to get said funding, to get sponsorships and stuff like that. And by doing that, we're just taking all these side streets. And again, this is kind of like a minor spoiler, but like, you know, one way he does that is he hustles at pool at ping pong tables. So he'll go play. Hey, anybody looking to play? Want to put a little bit of money on it? I'm not too good. And then he hustles these people and gets a boatload of money, and then that's that. But we spend a lot of time doing that. And then at one point he gets a hotel room, and then there's an issue with the hotel room, and then we spend a lot of time doing that. Then he develops this relationship with, well, he has relationships with multiple women throughout the movie. We spend a long time on that. And then every now and then the movie's like, oh yeah, ping pong. And then we got to circle back to ping pong. Or it talks about, the aftermath of World War II and all that stuff. And then it's like, oh yeah, ping pong. And like I I just wanted more ping pong in my ping pong movie. This movie, this movie is like a collection of chaos, which some people will really like because it's just got this big art house flair of anything can happen and everyone's important and there's all these side stories. What's over here, what's over here, what's over here, and it's like, you know, when you're serving a meal, I'm interested in the main dish. The side dishes can be good, the appetizers can be good, but I shouldn't leave thinking about, like, the appetizers. I shouldn't leave thinking about, "Oh, boy, the peas were great," No, I should be thinking about the steak, the pasta, the fish, the chicken, and it's like the chefs of the movie, the director, the writer, it's like they forgot what kind of food they were making, kind of a weird analogy, but I hope you could follow it, but like, yeah, just kind of an interesting thing. And so Marty Supreme, um, I liked it. I did not love it. I did not hate it, but you know, it did not meet my expectations. I was disappointed by it. Will I ever watch it again? Probably not on my own. Now, if I have friends who are like, I've never seen it, let's sit down and watch it. Yeah, sure. I'll check it out. But I'm not running to the theater to see it again. I'm not running to buy it on Blu-ray. You know, it's it's just what an interesting movie. I'll say this though. Timothy Chalamet, great. I mean, the kid, the young man, he has so much talent. It's unbelievable. I mean, this kid's got the goods. The period piece aspect of it, I think everything looks and sounds amazing. It's a real, feat for the eyes and the ears. I think it's just great. Um, you know, when the ping pong scenes are there, I mean, they're awesome to watch. If you've ever seen like real legitimate like professional ping pong, it's essentially like that. Um, yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of great ingredients for this movie. I just thought that ultimately the kind of the finished product, the end result, the cake that you get from putting all these ingredients together, I just thought it wasn't all that great. It wasn't what I was expecting, but all right, I suppose. But yeah, Marty Supreme, an interesting movie. I'm glad that it you know, is out. I'm glad that, someone decided, let's do a ping pong story, you know, again, as a period piece and whatnot. But yeah, I wanted more ping pong from my ping pong movie. So yeah, Marty Supreme, good, not great, not really memorable in my opinion, but if you like it, great. I hope you do. But yeah, anyway, we'll just go on from there.
Hey kids, welcome back to the Far Out Podcast. For this episode, I decided to record it over the course of several days, and for this very segment that you're listening to right now, This is being recorded in 2026. The new year has come and gone, so happy new year to everyone, kids. I hope that you had a good time over the holiday season with Thanksgiving, Christmas, and now New Year's. And I hope that you got to spend it with friends and family. And I hope that you did special things for each occasion and that you make 2026 your year. And one way you can make it your year, kids, is that you can look forward to some pretty cool movies. Because now that we're in 2026, we're in the year for a lot of big releases. I mean, you got Supergirl and you got a new Avengers movie, which we'll talk about a little later. But upcoming in the heat of the summer season is a new one that I don't think people are really talking about enough, and that is an upcoming Steven Spielberg movie. And, look, for those of you that don't know Spielberg, you absolutely know his work because he is the director of such movies like Jaws and Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. I mean, this guy make some truly remarkable films, films that have stood the test of time for decades and decades, and they will continue to do that as we, continue onward with our lives and whatnot. But while we can talk about the movies that he's made in the past, we can also talk about the movies that he's going to make in the future. And one that he has made, one that is coming out now in 2026, is a new sci-fi movie called Disclosure Day. And Disclosure Day, there's not a lot revealed about this movie. You could say that there's not a lot disclosed about it because when this was in production, it was under such lock and key that, like, the only thing that we knew about this movie up until the release of this trailer and this poster that I'm going to talk about here is that Spielberg was making a new movie. That was it. Like, the studio behind it, Universal, said we're working with Spielberg, and everyone went, "Great! What's he working on? What's the title? What's the plot? Who's in it?" And Universal was like, "Oh, we'll let you know in time." And like nothing leaked, there were no little snippets of stuff released. It was truly just like there was nothing. It was like it was being made inside of a black box. And excuse me. And there were rumors that it was sci-fi related. Universal did not comment. There were rumors it wasn't just sci-fi related, but that it was also alien focused, a la uh, Spielberg's. What's that movie he did called? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That's what it is. He made a UFO related movie uh, earlier in his career called Close Encounters, which is quite good as well. But now he's coming back to the alien world. But yeah, Universal was like, man, maybe he's working on a sci-fi thing. Maybe he's working on an alien type thing. Well, now it is official because they have decided to do kind of a full reveal, or at least they're gonna tease the full reveal about what this movie is about because we now have the title with it being called Disclosure Day, and we also have an idea of what the movie is, and it does have to do with aliens or perhaps UFO encounters. And whereas ET, for example, is much more fantastical, where you actually interact with the creature, with the alien, and it's this fun family adventure. Disclosure Day, I think it's going to take the route, honestly, of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because if you watch that movie, also directed by Spielberg, like I said, that movie is entirely about the true, real reveal of aliens to a populace and how that affects people, and how our governments would respond, and the sense of curiosity and wonder and fear that goes along with that. And with UFOs and alien culture being so prevalent now in our own society as well, I think this movie is coming out at a darn near perfect time. And the fact that Spielberg is going to be spearheading this in terms of writing, directing the whole bit, I just think this thing is going to be a treat. And like I said earlier, there is a new poster and a new trailer and some details as well. And what's interesting regarding this trailer is that it really does feel more akin to Close Encounters than, say, something like Interstellar. Because Interstellar, directed by Christopher Nolan, that takes the idea of space, space travel, exploration, and tries to put into a very real context, as if this could actually happen based on real scientific principles. And I think Disclosure Day is going to try to appeal to that in a sense, while also harkening back to something like an ET or a Close Encounters. Not so much ET, maybe in terms of like, I think I mean ET more in terms of like it's gonna be a little more digestible than say Interstellar, because like Interstellar is a thinking man's movie. Like that thing is deep, and you have to really get invested into that to fully figure it out. And I love Interstellar for that reason. I think that's why most people do as well, because it's not just your standard sci-fi fare. But Disclosure Day, it has to do with the reveal of aliens, yet it's done through much more palatable means. Like there appears to be a wide um, well, there's a well, for it's literally wide in the sense that it's global. Because in the trailer they say that this guy has this access to this information, and he's like, it's the right of 7 billion people to know this. He's like, and I'm gonna tell everyone all at once, and that's why it's called Disclosure Day, because apparently there's this character who's going to seemingly reveal the information that we are truly not alone, and how that's going to affect the Earth at large. But the delivery method that it appears is being utilized for the film is that it has something to do with animals, and that's where I'm drawing comparisons to say E.T., for example, because E.T. is kind of this, cute, lovable creature, kind of like, Yoda, from Star Wars. And Yoda was, a literal physical puppet when, he first made his debut in Empire Strikes Back. Same with E.T. as well. When that movie was originally made, he was a very physical prop as well. And now with Disclosure Day, while there may be not so much using real animals, though I'm not fully sure because some of those shots look real, it seems that a conduit for this type of reveal is going to be through animals, because there's numerous shots throughout the trailer of people interacting with like deer and birds and stuff like that. And there aren't many plot details other than the fact that it stars Emily Blunt, who I really appreciate as an actress. I think she's wonderful. And then there's the other guy, the guy who seemingly has this information. His name is Josh O'Connor. The last thing I saw him in was Knives Out 3: Wake Up Dead Man, which I was not a fan of that movie per se. He though was quite good in it, so I have to give him his flowers there. But what's going to happen is that somehow, some way, at least this is my understanding of the movie, somehow, some way, the aliens are going to communicate through people and animals, because in the trailer you see Emily Blunt essentially speak in tongues. She speaks in a language that doesn't resemble any other language on Earth, and people are really taken aback by that, and that leads to investigation. And then, like I said, you have the animal angle as well, where there seems to be this kind of connection happening between animals and people as well. And yeah, the trailer doesn't give a whole lot away. It really more so just kind of provides just a small bit of context for what could be coming. But in terms of Spielberg doing another sci-fi picture, I think that, like I said, this thing is going to be much more akin to, say, a Close Encounters and perhaps an Interstellar than your E.T., for example. But with it being Spielberg, I think he might pull back on those sensibilities a little bit. I'm not saying it'll be like cute and cuddly or anything. I mean, it looks like a straightforward, adult drama, but it's interesting. I wonder how they're going to really tackle this. I would love for Spielberg and the company behind him to treat this with, big boy gloves per se. I would love a real straightforward, drama that really dives into the mystery and the sheer shock and awe factor that an alien reveal would bring, as opposed to something like, again, ET, or say something in Star Wars. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This looks like a much more mature outing by Spielberg. Because again, he's made great family films and some animated films as well. But he's also the guy behind Saving Private Ryan. Which is considered one of the best, if not the best, horror movie, ever for me personally. My personal favorite is Hacksaw Ridge, but I digress. But yeah, in terms of Spielberg telling a much more mature sci-fi story, I'm all in, man. And like I can't wait for this. This thing comes out June 2026, and yeah, I can't wait. We are now in the year of Disclosure Day, boys and girls. So yeah, all will be disclosed in due time. All right, kids, moving on. As I previously mentioned when talking about 2026 and how that's a big year for movies, one of the biggest movies to come out this year is Avengers Doomsday. Yes, kids, if you did not know,
there's another Avengers movie coming out, which I know sounds kind of crazy because, like, on its surface, you know, Marvel essentially brought its entire story mythology to a close, at least speaking cinematically. I'm not talking about comics or shows or anything like that, but you know, if you're a fan of Marvel, you know what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the original Avengers lineup with Captain America and Iron Man and Thor and all those great heroes. Well, we've been on countless stories. 3 Iron Man movies, 3 Captain Americas. Oh gosh, 4 Thor films, I think. Yeah, 4. But then there's also 4 Avengers movies in there as well. You have Avengers from 2012. You have Avengers: Age of Ultron, the second one in 2015. You have Avengers Infinity War released in 2000. Oh boy, I can do this. 18. And then you have Avengers Endgame, which was released, I believe, in 2021, if not 2022. And Endgame truly felt like a final conclusion to this whole thing. And that movie's been out for a long time, so it's not like I'm, spoiling it or anything, but like, Iron Man dies. He sacrifices himself. Thanos is defeated, and Steve Rogers, Captain America, he's a man out of time, so he goes back because that movie has to deal with time travel, so Steve Rogers, Captain America, he goes back in time and resets the timeline and, puts things back in the way that they should be so that time can progress, forward. And so you have, again, not only the removal of the big bad done by Iron Man resulting in his death, you eliminate Thanos, but then you also have the the preservation of time and life set forth by Captain America. And, by him doing that, he got to live a life, apart from everything else. And so by the time that his story concludes with the main, cast of characters again, we see him as an old man now because, you know, what happened, just in the span of a couple seconds for us were decades of life for him as he traveled through time and reset things. But he got to have the life that he never, you know, got a chance to have because remember, Steve Rogers, um, initially is from the generation of World War II, and he gets trapped in the ice, and that results in him coming into our present day. And I mean, the story of these characters because again, these are huge blockbusters and whatnot. But again, the point that I'm making is that Endgame was the conclusion to so many stories. Again, not just the entirety of the Avengers, but also in terms of the galactic campaign against Thanos and saving Earth. But it also was the conclusion for individual characters such as Iron Man and Captain America and also Black Widow. Because if you remember, she unfortunately died in that movie and whatnot. But yes, kids, there is now a fifth Avengers movie coming out, which seemingly continues this story. And what's really significant is that this movie is called Avengers Doomsday, and the first poster has been released in similar fashion with the Avengers movies. It just, is the A logo, except this one is green because this one has to do with Doctor Doom. And Doctor Doom in this movie, for those of you that don't know, is going to be played by Robert Downey Jr. And Robert Downey Jr. is the actor who played Iron Man throughout the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So just think about that just for a minute, kids. The actor, the face of Iron Man, who died in Avengers Endgame, he is now playing a villain, a separate character, an entirely separate character that we know of at least, played by the same actor. You have the same person playing not only two roles, but two very different roles, one being a hero, the other being the antagonist of an Avengers movie. And if you follow Marvel closely and if you've seen stuff post Endgame, Spider-Man and other TV projects and Captain America, with the Falcon, Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie. Marvel has now entered in the phase of multiverses and pocket dimensions and alternate timelines and stuff. Because who doesn't love a good slice of time travel? So that could explain how the face of Iron Man seemingly comes back as Doctor Doom. Is this a new individual original character that just happens to be played by Robert Downey Jr., who again is the face of Iron Man? Or is this an Iron Man. Is this a Tony Stark variant who goes bad, who instead becomes a hero? Turns out he becomes the villain known as Doctor Doom. So he doesn't make Iron Man armor. He instead makes Doom armor. We don't know. We don't have that many details on the movie. But just as how a poster has gotten released, there have also been teasers, as in multiple. There are teaser trailers for this movie, Avengers Doomsday, which comes out December 2026. And one of them, kids, plainly, clearly states that Captain America, the original Captain America, Steve Rogers, is coming back for Avengers Doomsday. And again, whereas you have the original actor of Iron Man playing a villain, coming back now as a villain, you have the original Captain America actor Chris Evans coming back as the character. And again, as I previously said, he had his conclusion. He had his end. His story is finished because he got to go back in time and live a life where he wasn't needed as a hero. He got to have a life with his girlfriend, now wife. Her name is Peggy. The woman that he lost in World War II. He got to have that life with her. She didn't die in World War II, but you know what I mean. Like when he went down to the ice, he was frozen in time. Life went on. He did not. So at the end of Avengers Endgame, he gets to live that life. And so again, his story's done. But now this trailer, this teaser for Captain America clearly states that Steve Rogers, Chris Evans, will return in Avengers Doomsday. And that to me is crazy, because again, I just spoke about how we have a fourth Captain America movie called Captain America: Brave New World, and that movie features a new take on Captain America, played by Sam Wilson, the character of Sam Wilson, who was played by the actor Anthony Mackie. Lots of names, I understand, but just follow me here. But that one of the guys that was in the Marvel movies who was formerly the Falcon character is now the new Captain America. So in a world where we have a new Captain America, we're not bringing back the old one, which is kind of crazy. And then in addition to the Captain America reveal, the return of Steve Rogers, we have yet another reveal for another teaser. This one featuring Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth, and Thor has continued on. He didn't die. His story did not conclude in Endgame, and in this Thor reveal, we see him wandering a through a forest, and he's praying. I mean, quite literally, he's at least he's meditating. He's speaking to someone or something, asking for strength to continue to fight and to protect those who he cares about. That being his daughter, because now he has a daughter, uh, and uh, and all that. So it's very emotional. And also I think I forgot to mention this, but in the trailer for Captain America, we see Steve Rogers now has a kid of his own. The trailer concludes with him holding a child, so not only did he get to go back in time to live more of a civilian life and to be with Peggy, uh, but he got to have a family as well. So yeah, there have been two teasers released for this upcoming Avengers movie, and there are rumored to be more on the way. One of them is rumored to be X-Men centered, which features the original X-Men lineup from the early 2000 movies. So, think of the original X-Men movies that have like, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. We're going to see that original lineup of like Magneto, Professor X, Cyclops, so on and so forth. There's rumored to be a trailer that focuses on them, and there's rumored to be a trailer that focuses on Doctor Doom, fully presenting him to the audience, which again is played by Robert Downey Jr. They're drip feeding these teasers out because I actually saw the Captain America trailer. I saw the Chris Evans featured Doomsday trailer when I saw Avatar 3: Fire and Ash. I saw that trailer in the theater. That was my first time ever seeing it, and I did not talk about it at the time because that was I was focused on talking about Avatar. But I got to see that one in the theaters. The Thor one I have not seen in theaters. Uh, I just saw it on Twitter, on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. And yeah, but as Marvel kind of drips out these teaser trailers for Doomsday, they appear to be updating screenings of Avatar: Fire and Ash as well. And so there's a chance that if I were to go back and see Avatar again in the theaters, then I would get a chance to see the Thor trailer, which is cool, because it's interesting that again they're fragmenting these teaser trailers that they're putting them out one at a time to really kind of eventize this and build it up. It's they're making it very character focused because again, to me, this is so profound in the fact that after Avengers Endgame, you have conclusions to many characters, yet these characters are coming back and they're making a big deal out of it. And even if the characters aren't coming back, the actors themselves are, and that is also a big deal in and of itself, where we have recasts and so on and so forth. But I got to be honest though, despite me being this big pop culture guy, and if you listen to this podcast, all I talk about is movies, TV, and superheroes, and occasionally I talk about some books, and stuff like that. But like for someone who is so into pop culture, the culture that pops and does not stop, and I'm all in on the Superman movie and the new DC universe for all this stuff, and I love the Avengers, I love Captain America, I love Iron Man because again, as I've said before, the Marvel slate of movies gave me a continuous revolving door of opportunities to go to the movies with my mom, and I mean that to me is worth more than anything else. So I'm so thankful that these movies exist because I love to get opportunities to spend time with my mom. But I gotta be honest, despite me being in the bag on all of this, despite me loving Marvel and loving the Avengers movies prior, I'm not really looking forward to this movie. And at least right now. And I gotta be honest, these trailers, they're not really doing it for me. You would think, kids, I'm the kind of guy where I will read a book and cry. I will watch a movie I've already seen before and cry. I will clap at the end of movies, like I've seen Star Wars 100 times. Yet when Palpatine still gets thrown down that chute in the Death Star too, I'm like, yeah, he got him. Like the good guys won, go team. I know how it's gonna end, yet I'm still so invested. I'm like, the good guys won. Ain't that great? Like I'm all in. I'm really a kid when it comes to this stuff, man. Like I'm a grown man talking about this stuff, but like I'm a kid at heart, you know what I mean? And like so yeah, just with my sensibilities, with the way I love all this storytelling. It's just for whatever reason, it's just not doing it for me. At least not right now. Of course, I will see Avengers Doomsday. I will probably see it at least 5 times, who knows? Um, but, like, you would think I'd be over the moon. You would think I would be falling out of my chair. You would think I'd be crying to you right now, saying, "Can you believe it? They're bringing back Captain America and Thor." You would think I would be doing that, but I'm not because, again, kids, for me, the sense of storytelling throughout these movies is so incredibly important, and the fact that this is happening, this kind of, in my opinion, unwarranted continuation of this story, for me, it's an enormous gamble. Like again, because in my opinion, Avengers Endgame is uh, seemingly a perfect ending for so many different storylines. And like Captain America, he had his end. Iron Man, he had his end. You know, and for them to come back, I I don't know how to feel about it. You would think I'd feel excited, but, like, I'm not. I'm honestly, I'm kinda apathetic to it all, and when I see these trailers come up in theaters or on my Twitter feed, I'm like, "Oh, you know, cool. Anyway, moving on." Whereas, like, when Avengers: Infinity War was coming out and Endgame, oh my gosh, kids, I remember where I was when those trailers came out. I mean, I literally started, like, shaking. Like, I got, like, chills. I was like, "I can't believe it." Like, we're gonna see them fight Thanos. Like, who knows what's gonna happen, like, because after Infinity War, when half the team freaking died, it's like anything can happen. Anyone can go, you know? And again, you have that culmination in Endgame, and it's just perfection. Honestly, arguably, it's perfection, And, like, for them to say, "Hold my beer, we're going back in again." Of course, I will eat it with a fork and a knife, but right now, I'm not very hungry, Like, forg forgive the stupid analogy, but, like, yeah, kids, mark the calendars as of January 2nd, 2026. I'm not that excited for Avengers: Doomsday, and I'm not very excited by the fact that these characters played by these actors are coming back as well, because again, I'm so completely satisfied by Endgame's conclusion I don't think anything more needs to be done. Now that being said, a a Gucci, you know, bomb diggity trailer could come out showing Captain America's throwing a shield and Thor throwing his hammer, and I'll be like, "Take my money." I will lose my mind. But like for right now, I'm just not feeling it. I'm much more excited by the idea of seeing the original X-Men and a new Doctor Doom than I am by seeing the return of these original heroes. So yeah, like the fact that we have another Avengers movie, um, it doesn't feel real. It honestly doesn't feel necessary. And I gotta be honest, and this is gonna sound crazy, but I mean this sincerely. It honestly, it's kind of a desperate play because again, Iron Man died. Tony Stark, the guy behind the suit, he died. And you have that actor essentially retire from the role, and now for him to come back, for the same actor to play a different role in the same continuity is a big swing. And for Captain America, for Steve Rogers to come back again after we've already passed the mantle, we've passed the shield to Sam Wilson, the former Falcon, now new Captain America. It just I just feel, in my opinion, it feels unwarranted. So I don't know. Look, again, like I said, I will still see this movie and I can still get excited for it, but this thing doesn't have an uphill climb. This thing has many hills to climb up. I mean, they might as well be vertical. I mean, they're so steep. I mean, so yeah, like looking ahead to 2026, I truly, looking ahead into 2026, I am more excited for Supergirl, for the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm more excited for Dune 3, for Disclosure Day. For me, Endgame. For me, Avengers Doomsday right now is honestly an afterthought, which is nuts to say because it's bringing back many characters, many actors of the original lineup. If 2012, 2015 me would be losing my mind. I'd be doing a backflip, but right now it's like, oh, okay. Anyway, moving on. Like yeah, so I don't know. It's just it feels so weird to be apathetic about an Avengers movie. But, we have a long time between it coming out because it's going to come out in December as well. So, and it's January. So we have a full year essentially before it releases. So a lot can happen, a lot can change. My opinion can change. And as more information and more trailers and posters and stuff come out, I'll definitely talk about it. But yeah, as of right now, as weird as it may sound, I'm not excited for Avengers Doomsday. But if you are, it's awesome. And I hope to be at your level, and I can't wait to see it, in a full theater. And I'm sure I'll have a wonderful time with my mom at my side and whatnot. But yeah, it feels kind of weird to to feel this way. It feels weird to feel this way, kids, about an Avengers movie. So yeah, Avengers Doomsday is releasing in theaters December 2026. Anyway, kids, moving on and keeping it with trailers and posters being released. There is a new trailer and a new poster for the previously mentioned Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan. And as I said when I talked about Avengers Doomsday, I am more excited for the Odyssey than maybe any other movie. I can't decide yet if I'm more excited for the Odyssey or for Supergirl when it comes to the 2026 releases for movies. But, but, um, this new trailer and this new poster, it definitely affected the scales a little bit because first of all, this poster, yeah, magnificent. I mean, look, like there's not a lot here like visually. It's not like we have a look at the cast or a look at the characters and stuff like that. It's actually a very contained shot. It's quite close up, and then we see stuff going on in the background there with what seemingly looks like an army, or at least a mass group of people. But like, man, the color in this poster is spellbinding. I mean, you have the chill ice blue that Christopher Nolan loves, and in my opinion, is a tribute to Michael Mann because he loves those deep dark blues as well. And then you have this nice golden spine, aligning the back of this helmet here, and like, like that, because this has to do with like with like, the Greeks and stuff like that, like the Odyssey has to do, back in those times. So I mean, that's not just decoration. Like that is probably literally some dude's actual literal spine that was taken off the battlefield and was affixed to this guy's helmet. And like, oh yeah, the fact that Christopher Nolan is adapting the Odyssey is nuts because, again, as I previously said when talking about Disclosure Day, Christopher Nolan likes to take ideas and present them in very real world, very tangible, practical contexts. Again, you look at Interstellar, that's a real take on like space travel, not Star Wars or Star Trek. That's like, what could a rocket ship actually do? What could a wormhole actually do? How does a black hole affect us when we get closer to it? Even when it comes to his Dark Knight trilogy, his take on Batman, whereas Batman is a superhero. It's not real. Christopher Nolan said, "Hold my beer. I'm going to make Batman real." And so he put it in a real world context. Whereas the Dark Knight trilogy is arguably more of a crime detective storytelling trilogy than it is a Batman trilogy, just because like it's so grounded that you can enjoy it both as a piece of Batman media, and then you can also enjoy it just as a piece of just as a crime drama epic essentially. And it's freaking nuts. And so the fact that Nolan, coming off of his filmography, which now includes Oppenheimer, that is his latest entry into the cinemas, and that was a huge grand epic as well, telling the story of the Manhattan Project. You know he after doing that, after having that movie, which is essentially a biopic, making just under $1 billion, made like 950 million worldwide. He truly could have done anything he wanted. I mean, the world was his oyster. The movie making landscape, Hollywood was ready for whatever he chose next. He could have done a Star Wars movie. He could have done another superhero thing. He could have done a movie about um, a professional chef. He could have done a movie about, um, you know, basket weaving. I mean, he could have made anything he wanted for his next film because he is a premier, top shelf Hollywood director, writer extraordinaire. He makes incredible pieces of cinema, not just movies, not just films. In my opinion, he makes cinema. In my opinion, there is a distinction between all three of those. Christopher Nolan, though, is one of the best to ever do it, just bar none. He is. And so, with him having like essentially a blank check and complete choice for whatever he wants to do. The fact that he chose the Odyssey, something which is incredibly fantastical, in my opinion, the best way to describe the Iliad and the Odyssey is exaggerated history because, like, the Odyssey has to do with like, Odysseus, and it's set during like the Trojan War, and like that's like, a real piece of time and whatnot. It's not like that's all completely fictional, like those actual armies, those factions, they all existed and whatnot, has to do with the Greeks and all that stuff, so it's real in the sense that like there's literal history behind it all. But you actually look inside that story and it's like it has to do with like, Zeus and Mount Olympus and the gods and, these supernatural things, So, like, again, the Odyssey tells a story of real people in a real setting, yet affected and influenced by otherworldly type things. It's, again, in my opinion, exaggerated history. So the fact that, like, this, that, that, that source material alone would be a Herculean effort for anyone to adapt. You'd almost have to do it more Lord of the Rings inspired, in my opinion. Yet for Christopher Nolan, who loves to do things real and tangible, like again, he presented Batman as a real world superhero. What would a hero dressed as a bat actually look like? Interstellar, what would space travel actually look like? Oppenheimer, let's tell the real story behind the Manhattan Project and pull no punches. For him to say, I'm going to tackle the Odyssey, which has to do with Greek warfare, the Trojan War, and also has creatures like a Cyclops in it. For him to say, "I'm going to do this," like this is going to be a visual, technical storytelling marvel. I mean, like inside this trailer, there are shots of huge armies, ships at sea who and they look like real ships manned by real people. I mean, I'm sure he did that all for real, and I've even heard that when it comes to the Cyclops scene, and you get a brief glimpse of said Cyclops in this trailer, I heard that they built an actual literal puppet that's like 13 feet tall. I don't know if that's real or not, but like Christopher Nolan is the kind of guy that's like, yeah, there's a Cyclops in this. Okay, we're gonna do it for real. Like, who knows? Like there was this rumor slash joke, like when it came to him doing Oppenheimer, which again has to do with the Manhattan Project, has to do with nuclear testing. There was this joke that what is Christopher Nolan gonna detonate a real nuke to get the practical effect? Yeah, he would. He would if he could. He'd probably get a low yield nuclear device, and just say, let's just drop it over there and I'll record it on my camera. Okay, go. So like for him to tackle again the Odyssey, which features a Cyclops, he probably called Elon Musk and was like, "Hey, look, man, like, can we do that? Oh, we can't. Okay, thanks, bye." So he probably was like, "Okay, if I can't have a real Cyclops, we're gonna make a quote real one out of puppetry and making a costume and whatnot." Apparently, it's huge, but I digress. But what else is gonna be freaking big is this movie. I mean, this trailer is grand and epic and operatic. I mean, and the cast in this movie, I mean, oh my gosh, like the cast includes but is not limited to Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, John Bernthal. I mean, like these if you don't know those people by name, you've seen their work. Like you just have. They're some of the biggest stars to, grace the silver screen right now. And the fact that they're all under the umbrella of Christopher Nolan, who again is one of the best filmmakers working today, in my opinion. Uh, I can't wait for the Odyssey. I can't wait. And this trailer, this poster, it's just mm, mm, that's some good filmmaking right there that I can see. Look, this movie might come out and it might be terrible. Who knows? Who knows? Everyone has a bad day at the office. This one could be Nolan's. Who knows? I highly doubt that. The guy's like 12 for 12 when it comes to making films. Um, but who knows? But like even Christopher Nolan's bad day, air quote, bad day at the office is still going to be freaking epic. And yeah, the Odyssey looks like it's going to be that in spades. And I cannot wait for this movie. It comes out in July. And funny enough, actually, when I saw um, Jurassic Park 7, Jurassic World 4, Rebirth, also known as Refund. When I saw that movie in theaters before I walked out on it, which I did actually, before that movie started, there was a shorter teaser trailer, more of an announcement trailer for the Odyssey. That was the best thing I saw in that theater that day, including Jurassic World Rebirth. But I digress. But seriously, like every time I see something new from the Odyssey, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I can't believe someone actually made this. This is gonna be just bananas. And yeah, I can't wait. The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan, comes out July 2026.
Keeping it with the Odyssey for a bit longer, in the lead up to this movie coming out, I'm doing my research on it. I really am. And one of the ways I'm doing that is that I'm actually going to read both the Iliad and the Odyssey, the books, prior to this movie releasing. And I actually just finished the Iliad, which is, essentially the prequel to the Odyssey. The Iliad gives context for the Trojan War, and that was the last book that I read in 2025. And this is kind of a complicated thing to digest as a piece of literature because I believe that the Iliad and the Odyssey, because it's not like I'm reading them in the original Greek, and I believe Homer, the author, not Homer Simpson, Homer the poet. I believe he wrote them as literal poems, and so the versions that I'm reading and have read are being presented by Penguin Publishing, and I'm not fully sure how they really developed the story because, again, to my knowledge of literal history, I believe Homer wrote these stories, these pieces of, again, exaggerated history as poems, and so I'm not fully sure what liberties were taken to form a poem or poems into an actual book that has like chapters and stuff, but I'm honestly just trusting Penguin. I'm trusting their continuity. I'm trusting their sensibilities when it comes to presenting the material. I'm trusting that they did their due diligence to not take many creative liberties and to present this as just another book that can be digested as opposed to reading original Greek poetry, you know. But anyway, with all that being said, uh, the version that I picked up by Penguin Publishing of the Iliad, I listened to it via audiobook over 2025, and I got to be honest, it was incredibly difficult to consume. And I think I really kind of did myself in by going the audiobook route. To be fair, I did look for the original paperback, um, the actual physical book when I decided to sit down with the Penguin Publishing edition because that's what I like to do, kids, is that when I find an audiobook I like to have the literal physical copy as well. So that way I can read the physical copy when I'm at my home and then I can listen to the audiobook like when I'm driving, so I can just keep up with the story, and just kind of continue it throughout my day. I could not find the Penguin Publishing version of the Iliad, and I looked. Believe me, I looked. So for me, the only way I consumed this was through the audiobook version, and I actually really like audiobooks. I think that they're a great companion piece to the original books. I mean, I of course prefer traditional paper, based literature, but I digress. But anyway, listening to the Iliad was rough because again, it's based off of poetry and it's honestly it's written by Shakespeare. Like Shakespeare writes in metaphors and synonyms and all this stuff. He uses very elaborate, very deep and complex um, language. He doesn't tell things in a straightforward way. He loves to really, put all the frosting on the cake, so to speak. That's how Shakespeare, is Shakespeare and whatnot. The same is kind of honestly said for the Iliad. There's shades of that grand exposition and deliberation between things, and trying to explain things in a way that, I mean, yes, I'm sure sounds romantic and sophisticated, but when I'm listening to it, I'm like what, because it's like it's like Odysseus, you know, uh, traversed up the plain, not only of his mind, but also his heart. And each footstep carried him deeper into the void. And he went over many numerous, encampments as well. And he faced several things along the way. And then you realize, like, oh, he actually just went up a mountain. And while he was going up a literal mountain, he was like having turmoil inside, like about this, that, and the other thing. So it's like, there were some points where I was like, can you please just tell me what it is these characters are doing? Can you not explain it in can you explain something in 5 words instead of 500? There were parts where I wanted that, and I know. Look, my injuries are self-inflicted. Again, I'm reading an interpretation of Greek poetry, So yeah, my mileage may vary. That being said, though, that being said, despite it being confusing and literally like a slow burn. I listened to this book not at full speed. I had to slow it down because it's so complex. Uh, when the trailer came out, and when I was reading stuff about the trailer for Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, talking about like Agamemnon, Agamemnon, and like Odysseus, and like all this other stuff, I was like, I I think I know who that is. I think I know what they're doing. I think I know where they're going. So it literally was providing some framework for the trailer. And look, the proof is in the pudding. Because if by getting the Iliad consumed, the prequel to the Odyssey, if that's already making my enjoyment of the Odyssey trailers and stuff more so, then by the time I finish the Odyssey before the movie comes out, I'm gonna go into a movie theater. I'm gonna be like, I know that, I got it. So like, look, kids, you don't need to do that, like for yourself, because Christopher Nolan, again, he's one of the best filmmakers in the business. He's going to make this movie palatable and digestible for people who have never even heard of this piece of history, or who have never heard of Homer, who have never read the Iliad, who have never read the Odyssey.
He's gonna do the heavy lifting for you. But if you're like me, who loves to dive in deep into movies, deep into storytelling, and get as much context as possible, I do recommend you somehow, some way, uh, treat yourself to the Iliad and the Odyssey. I do recommend that you do both because, again, the Iliad does provide the context for the Trojan War, and then the Odyssey is it's just that it's the Odyssey of Odysseus, and whether you choose to do that through a traditional book or audiobook or whatever else, go nuts, go crazy, have a good time. I do recommend though getting a paperback version of these things because, again, listening to them was very, very tough. It was honestly like listening to someone, um, speaking like a different language, like it was kinda like that, or like being taught like algebra. Like, I think I know what you're getting at, but like I don't really understand. Like, that was me most of the time through. That's not a knock on Penguin Publishing because, again, they're adapting Greek poetry into a novel. How do you do that? I'll say this though, for the book itself, while I was confused dialogue wise and like where I was having some trouble, with like context for like actual scenes in the book. I'll say this though, the way that the action scenes are depicted, like, is amazing. They do a great job with that, talking about spears flying and swords cutting and people dying and what it feels like to die and get injured. And they talk about the gravity of each combat scenario, where it's not just these cannon fodder engagements. Like, they talk about how when a soldier falls on the field, it's important to not only mourn the loss of your comrade, but also to, if you can, literally retrieve the body for proper burial. So that in itself was pretty interesting as well. And so I think that if the Odyssey can tap into those deeper themes, I think it'll make the movie all that better as well. And then also, I believe, well, no, I know this. I know what I know, kids. The movie Troy, which I think came out in 2004. Don't quote me on that. It stars Brad Pitt, so quote me on that part. The movie Troy with Brad Pitt does adapt the Iliad loosely. And so if you do not want to read the Iliad, though I recommend that you do, but if you don't want to read the Iliad, if you want to see a visual representation of it to provide context for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, I do recommend that you check out Troy. I'm going to watch Troy before I see the Odyssey. So, yeah, but anyway, kids, yeah, I read the Iliad, and it was difficult, but it was worth it. But yeah, so if you decided to check it out, the Penguin Publishing version might be good for you, might not. You'll have to do some exploration on yourself, but or for yourself, I mean. But yeah. Anyway, kids, the Odyssey comes out in later this year, July 2026. And yeah, the Iliad will provide some good framework for that movie. So yeah, anyway, let's look forward to going to the movies. Anyway, kids, the last thing I want to talk about is much more serious in tone and nature, and I actually wanted to spend some time on politics here for a little bit. And for me, if you listen to the podcast, regularly, you'll know that this is primarily for entertainment purposes. I usually talk more so about pop culture, movies, TV, but then I also cover stuff like music and books and so on and so forth. And I realized that, as I was recording this episode across the various segments and the various days, I realized I was kind of covering my bases here because I've talked about movies, I've talked about, you know, books as well and stuff like that. So I figured with it being uh, the first one in the new year, for this being the kind of the inaugural episode of 2026, I figured I'd spend a little bit of time here at the very end talking about politics. And I want to talk about it just from the sense that, look, if you go back to the very first episode of the podcast, when I was still figuring out its format, I said I'm not going to hide who I am. I'm a Christian and I'm a conservative as well, and that's not going to change. And I will continue to not hide myself and share my thoughts and opinions on the world and things at large, including politics and our relationship to the Lord and what that should look like. But despite that, despite me being a Christian conservative, uh, I can critique both sides of that equation. When it comes to me critiquing, air quote, critiquing the Lord, like, yeah, there are a lot of things I don't understand about
the big man upstairs. I don't know why certain things have happened in my life, and I don't know why certain things happen in other people's lives. And when I'm even continuing to read through scripture, I'm still working through the book of Genesis. The Old Testament, there's a lot of gross stuff in there, so it's not like it's always the best reading material. Yet I persevere through it because I feel that it's important. And the same can be said with politics as well. Despite me being a conservative, and despite me voting for Trump in this last election cycle, and despite me, being happy that my candidate won because I feel that he was the right man for the job when it came to this last election. I can critique him, and I will, and that's why I want to talk about this now. And I'm not this blind supporter of Trump or conservatives or the Republican Party at large. And again, despite me saying that I voted for him and that I'm glad that he is in office, his conduct as of late I have found to be disappointing in some levels. Uh, you know, Policy wise, I think he's doing mostly good things, and I think when it comes to how he handles the economy, I think he's doing a relatively good job too. Because like you can look at like the gas prices, they've gone down since he's taken office. We still have some ways to go with that, for example, but I think he's making you know progress in that department at least. But look, I mean, if you've woken up in the last decade, you'll know who Trump is and what he's about. He's a loudmouth. He's got a big mouth and a big voice, and he can say some really stupid things and can do some really stupid things. And I think that he has said and done very stupid things. And I think he's said and done things that are legitimately hurtful to people. And just, I think he's done things that are just not kind to people. He's made comments about some people passing, like literally dying. Like there was a director that died. His name is Rob Reiner, I believe. And he made movies like The Princess Bride and a few good. No, he did. He made a few good men, um, and stuff like that. Like, you know, he he made his death about himself, like right in the immediate aftermath, which I thought was just really gross and disgusting. And then lately in the Oval Office, he has made Trump has made literal plaques of other, for other former candidates, and so like Joe Biden, full disclosure, I did not vote for him when he won the presidency in 2020. I still consider him my president. He's still a piece of American history. I'm a patriot, and so I'm he was my commander in chief for those 4 years, and so I I wished him well with his tenure with the job, and I also wished him physical health as well. Since he's an older guy, um, but I wasn't a fan of his conduct. Largely speaking. That being said, President Trump took it to a whole nother level because he's, like I said, he has instituted these plaques in the Oval Office, which essentially give descriptions of people. It's like when you go to a museum and you see like a picture of someone on the wall, they'll have a plaque beneath that says like, you know, Bob Smith, invented the printing press or whatever. He lived so many years, yada yada. Well, for former presidents now, Trump has he's instituted plaques on his own accord for these other presidents. And the Joe Biden one, he literally refers to him as like Sleepy Joe, and like, I guess that's a somewhat funny jab, at him and whatnot. But like, in my opinion, you shouldn't be doing that when it comes to the literal White House. Like that's just not tasteful. I think that's really mean spirited. And like, the same thing with like Ronald Reagan, like, good president, good legacy and whatnot. But like Trump, underneath his plaque, or underneath his, his picture, he put a plaque that said like, Ronald Reagan like liked Trump like before Trump was president. And it's like, bro, it's like, can you can you can you get off the high horse? Can you breathe like some real air here? Like look, I think I'm at the point in my relationship to politics to where I like most of Trump's policies, but I'm liking him less as like a person. Like, yeah, on some levels he can be
a fun and funny battering ram type guy. He's very much made for TV. He knows how to work a camera. He knows how to work a crowd. He has that entertainment bone in his body. Hence why he's been as popular as he has been, because he knows how to appeal to people. Whereas politicians, a textbook GI politician, can seem like they're a robot. Trump, say what you will about Trump, he is absolutely 100% authentically himself all the time, even to a detriment, you know. Um, so yeah, just in terms of what he's done lately, I just feel that there's just some stuff where I'm like, okay, dude, we get it. You like to make fun of your opponents, of your adversaries, but like, please, I just wish you'd be a little more respectful, a little more tasteful, a little more cool and level-headed, and stuff like that. But look, I'm preaching to the choir here. So, um, listen, Mr. President Trump, if you're listening to the podcast, and I know that you are, come on and let's talk about it. I would love to pick your brain about several things. But yeah, so look, like, yes, I'm a Christian and I'm a conservative, but I can acknowledge that the president is a jackwagon. At least he can be on certain things at certain times, and I don't always like that. I don't like reading in the news that he's made fun of someone's death, and then he then goes on and makes fun of former presidents. It's like, come on, man. It's like, why you got to do that? That's a reason too why I like Obama as much as I do. Like, he was before my time, obviously, like, well, maybe not obviously. When he was in office, I was just a kid, so it's not like I was into politics. When he was the president, I was like, where's my pudding, type stuff. Where are my Hot Wheels, and all that jazz. And then throughout um his second 4 years, I can't think of the proper word, not administration. Um, I can't I can't think of the word that describes 4 years worth of for presidential for presidential bid. But yeah, when sorry, I'm having a brain fart there. But when he won his second term, excuse me, my gosh, I think I'm having a stroke. Like, where's my water? Um, when Obama got elected into his second term, I actually remember when that happened. And he put up this picture on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. And that's the picture here I have up on screen right now for Obama. Is that he put out this tweet saying 4 more years. I didn't even have Twitter back then. I didn't have an account back then, but like that, I remember this picture circulating everywhere. And I always liked Obama, not so much from a policy perspective, but from a personality, which is honestly it's the prime difference between my opinion on him and Trump. I like Trump's policies, not so much his personality anymore. Wasn't a big fan of Obama's policies, but I liked his personality. Barack Obama was a very calm, cool, collected, sophisticated guy. He knew how to bring down the temperature in the room, and stuff like that. So when I go back and when I look at history and I look at, you know, his coverage in the media, how he did in interviews, how he did with things like that, of that nature. Um, there's something about his presence that I find to be really calming and reassuring. And honestly, I think that's why he was elected president in the first place. Because I think people recognize that about him, and I think that that's why he was also reelected for his second term. Yeah, I think people liked that sense of calm that he brought to the Oval Office and to the country. And again, you could debate policy all day long, and I'm just going to be honest. I don't know a whole lot about his policies and how he handled the country at large. I have a very brief surface level understanding, but my real exposure to him has been through his personality, through him speaking at college campuses, through his book deals. And I like the way he carries himself, not saying he always has the best moral compass. I think him and I differ on a lot of things, morally speaking, ideologically speaking. But that being said, the way he's able to speak to people, I find really refreshing. In the same way, how when Trump first came into view, I initially found his conduct to be refreshing as well. How he was this kind of battering ram that said, "Get out of my way or get crushed." I like the idea that he wasn't just going to roll over, But now, again, having been through over a half decade of his time in the office, or roughly a half decade, you know what I mean? Uh, I'm at the point now where I'm like, I need, I need, I need, we all need to take a chill pill and like just like, can we just sit and simmer for a bit, please? So yeah, look, like, and the whole reason why I'm bringing this up, the whole reason why I wanted to talk about politics at all, is because as we're starting a new year, as 2026 is now in our present and our future. Um, I think it's important that we try to support our elected officials however we can, even if we don't always agree with them and even if we don't always like them. I think that there's something important about being a good patriot, being a good citizen. And, if you're someone who believes in Christ and tries to follow his tenets, I believe it's of good mind, body, and spirit that we pray for our leaders. And so I do think we should pray for President Trump. I think that we should pray that he has wisdom and patience and the time to handle things. I think we should pray that he has good health, that he's not compromised when it comes time for him to do his duties for the country. I think it is in our best interest to go into 2026 with a mindset of, look, like, if you're listening out there, you might be thinking, like, he's not my president. I didn't vote for him. I'm a Democrat, whatever. That being said, in the same way how I tried to support President Joe Biden when he was in office, despite me not voting for him and despite me being a Republican, I think it's in your best interest if you are someone on the opposite side of the party to say, hey, you know what, he's not the guy I wanted, but he will be my guy until 2028, you know, and I have to try to support him. And I'm not gonna buy his merch. I'm not gonna wave his flag or whatever. But like at the very least, if we can hope and wish and pray that he has, again, good health and a good sense of mind and a sense of steadiness and sturdiness when it comes to executing his duties. I think that's good for not only you as an individual, I think it's good for also for the president, and I think it's good just for humanity at large that we can try to bury the hatchet, so to speak, and just come together and recognize that we need our leaders to be um, calm, cool, collected, and be sensible and just be responsible. And so, yeah, as we go into 2026, kids, even if President Trump is not your guy, or even if he is your guy, and you're kind of like me, to where yes, you did vote for him, but you're kind of over the whole deal. Um, just pray for him. Just say a prayer. Just say, Lord, please. It doesn't need to be anything specific. It doesn't need to be anything complex either. You can just say, Lord, please bless President Trump and let him make good decisions with a clear mind. There you go. There. You're in and out in under 10 seconds, you know. But yeah, I wanted to do this segment on the show today because um I think it's important, and I think that the start of a new year can be the start of many great things for people. Of course, there's the cliche of I'm going to go to the gym, and it's like, hey, look, if you have a New Year's resolution to go to the gym in 2026, God bless you. I hope you succeed. I hope you go to the gym, and I hope you get physically fit and all that. Like that's great. And some people might think like 2026, I'm going to reconnect with my family, or I'm 20 in 2026, I'm going to propose to my girlfriend. People use the start of a new year to reshape their lives, to restart their lives, to further their lives. It's a for a lot of people, it's a big mile marker. It's not just another day. For some people, it is, but for a lot of people, it's not. That's why we have New Year's resolutions. And so I think that if my opinion is worth anything to any of the listeners of this podcast, I think it would be in everyone's best interest if we could just try to have a positive mindset going forward regarding our politics and our politicians and all that stuff. And if we can just every now and then just wish President Trump President Trump good luck, I think that'll be good for the country and good for the individual as well. So yeah, and by the way, not for nothing, but like President Trump, he has. I hope he meant this as a joke, but he has said like, I might run for a third term. That was the worst President Trump
impression you've ever heard, but you know what I mean. He has said that he's open. At least he has said that he, would maybe consider running for a third term. But of course, there's no constitutional foundation for that, and stuff like that. So it's not going to happen. But let's just say, for some reason, it was allowed, legally speaking, legally. Let's say he could run for a third term. You know who else could run for a third term too? Obama. Think about it. Think about it, kids. If we're going to allow President Trump to run for a third term, hypothetically, if we were going to allow this, the same rules would then apply for Obama. He only did 2 terms. Who's to say he could not run against Trump for a competing third term? Boy, that would be a blast from the past, wouldn't it? And I'm just being honest. I'm being for real. I don't know who wins that. Truly, if Trump and Obama ran against each other again, um, in uh, in an election bid, in a presidential bid for a third term, they're both seeking a third term. I don't know who takes it. Uh, if I had to pick right now, gun to my head, I had to pick right now, Barack Obama would win. He would because again, take me for example. I'm someone who voted for Trump and I'm a Christian conservative, but I got to be honest, I'm I'm not going cold on him, but I'm getting more irritated than I have been in the past, and I'm I I'm at the point where I feel change is coming, whether it's good or bad. But I think people are kind of in that mindset, like we need something to change, and I think that people would jump at the possibility of the return to quote normalcy, the return to the sophistication that Barack Obama brought to the White House and to the country. So, look, will President Trump run for a third term? No, and he should respect the Constitution and the term limits and all that stuff. But again, just speaking hypothetically, speaking for funsies, if it were legally allowed for him to run for a third term, you would have to give the same availability to Barack Obama. And if they ran against each other, I believe that Obama would win for a third term. He would be reelected. And if he were to be reelected, I would say that we should pray for him as well for guidance and wisdom as he can lead our country. And that'll do it for this episode of the Far Out Podcast. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. Hope you had a great new year, and I hope that 2026 is your year. And I will see you at the movies. All right. Bye bye.